This is a quote from Jordan Peterson. You want to burn everything that the person who disgusts you owns. Know that he always talks about, or he often talks about how Hitler didn't fear the Jews, but found them disgusting. And so you'll see people who are pushing the nationalist agenda hard, and Hitler did this beautifully. Everything that was outside of the Aryan domain of purity wasn't to be feared. It was disgusting. It was contemptuous, and it should be destroyed by fire. And the Nazis, and that was his message. The Nazis were unbelievably great at using fire of purification as a symbolic message. In other words, Hitler burned the Jews beautifully. The Nazis were unbelievably great at burning the Jews. He said this at the University of Toronto, and that's where I'm going today. So here I am at the University of Toronto. I'm standing in an alley in front of some old building. I've got some notes here, and I just want to talk about, describe some of the conversations that I've had with people on the campus. So the first person I spoke to was a Vietnamese guy. He noticed the sign that I had, the rather unsubtle sign that says Jordan Peterson Nazi. And he wanted to know why I thought that, and he said that he'd heard that before. He'd been watching and listening to Jordan Peterson for 3 years. He said that he was a student, he had been a student at the university, now he worked for the university. I'm not sure in what capacity. He said that from Peterson he learned about why communism was bad, which was interesting to me because he said that he'd fled Vietnam in 1984, so I would expect that he would have some idea about why communism was not a great system. But he said that he didn't know anything about Nazism, and what he learned from Jordan Peterson most of all was Nazism, what he had to say about Nazism, which is really fascinating. And I told him, I said, well, many of the things that he says about Hitler, for example, they're just not true. They're just not factually correct. Like that he was, that he tried to, beautify the factories with Zyklon B. This is untrue. Or that he was elected by a landslide. This is untrue. So a lot of the historical tidbits that Peterson offers they're just lies. And he said, do you think even what he says about his personality is lies? So for example, he said that Hitler being disgust sensitive and how he didn't fear the Jews, but he found them disgusting. And I said, no, that's probably, that could be accurate or something like that. I think that he's a little on safer grounds. What I didn't tell him was that he knows exactly what Hitler is like because he has this similar personality. Peterson also finds non-whites disgusting. I didn't tell him that, but I said that's probably accurate enough or a fair enough assessment. So what I did was, because he knew about Peterson's Hitler disgust talk, I read him the quote about how that I read to you before I set out here. So I read that quote to him, and he's talking about burning not things, but he's talking about burning Jews, and that Hitler did this beautifully, and that the Nazis were unbelievably great at burning Jews. He just denied that that's what it meant, and that I was decontextualizing what he said, which is a common rebuttal, and that he said that he always tries to look at what people say favorably, never wants to see the bad side of anything, and it's very strange. And again, he said that he worked at the University of Toronto, but I don't know in what capacity. Then his acquaintance showed up. So this other guy showed up, and these guys were older than me. They're probably in their 50s or maybe even approaching 60. And so the guy wanted to know why I thought Jordan Peterson was a Nazi, but before I could explain, he accused me of having black and white thinking and said that I was biased, and he also called me an extremist. His argument was that Jordan Peterson couldn't have been a Nazi because Mein Kampf was still being published, and that one edition of Mein Kampf, apparently, according to him, even has a prologue written by a Jew. Therefore, my claims that Jordan Peterson is a Nazi must be false. He just didn't want to hear evidence, so I just took out evidence and started reading it to him. So the one that I always go to where Peterson says Hitler was an organizational genius. We need to admire, that's the thing, we need to admire Hitler. He was an organizational genius. And I asked him, do you agree that we should admire Hitler? And what was it that Hitler did that do you think that Peterson thinks would make him an organizational genius? Was it the war in Europe? Was it the Holocaust? But he wouldn't respond to this question. And then so it was more sort of, nonsense and whatever. And then the Vietnamese guy started to defend Ho Chi Minh. People say bad things about Ho Chi Minh. Well, some people say good things. Or one of their arguments was, people say things, but how do you know what they really mean? And so finally I read them a quote that says something like, if I had been there, I would have done it. I would have been a man who had done it. I would have Zig Heiled. I would have joined the Nationalist Party. And I suggested that this quote was from Jordan Peterson. And then the Vietnamese guy said, "Oh, that's the quote that made me realize that I could have been a Nazi." Only Peterson never made that quote. That quote was made by a known neo-Nazi whose name was Bela Ewald Altens, who was the main peanut in the packet in West Germany. He operated out of maybe Bonn or some other city in West Germany during the 80s. He's no longer involved in Nazism. I told the guy, I said, that quote doesn't come from Peterson. It comes from a known neo-Nazi. You just defended the speech of a known neo-Nazi, and he got upset with me. And then I did it. He accused me of tricking him, and then I did it again. With the other guy, I said, "Okay, what about this quote?" Again, implying that it was a Peterson quote, and I gave them another quote from Bela Ewald Altens, which was, Hitler was the most successful politician ever. And then again, they defended it. Oh, so what? It's just maybe he was, or who knows what he really means by this, or how can we say that this is a bad thing? Again, it's a quote from a known neo-Nazi. Successful how? What's successful? Murdering millions of people? And this is people need to understand that this is a common view. A lot of people, men, have this view. If you talk to men, especially working class men, about Nazism, they'll probably say something nice about Nazism, even if it's just that the Nazis had really nice helmets, or I really like their uniforms, or you have to admit that the Panzers were nicer than the Shermans, or they're impressed by something, impressed by men wearing jackboots and marching around in the square. It's really shocking. It's not a minority view. This is from what I've learned from talking to people about this. It's a commonly held view, and that ought to horrify everyone. But again, neo-Nazism is not a conversation that we want to discuss. It's impolite, it's impolitic, especially here in Canada. It's very, very, as I've said before, I don't like to use this word, but it's very, very, people would consider it very un-Canadian. It's just not something you discuss. And these are grown men, and I think that they're both employees at the University of Toronto, so we can see Peterson's insidious influence. But, we're not going to have a discussion about it. That's just not going to happen. And of course, as I've said, as I keep saying, again and again, the media doesn't want to talk about this either. So also, these are grown men. Imagine the influence that Peterson had on his students. Now, when I came in here this morning, I wasn't sure exactly how to transfer from one train station to a subway station. So I asked a girl sitting next to me, and as it happened, she was probably 19, and this was her first day of classes at the University of Toronto because of COVID. This was her second year, but last year and up until now, she's been learning online because of COVID. So she was all excited because this was going to be her first day of classes. And I was really struck by how young and kind of tender and sort of naive and very nice she was. But I was thinking, this is the age this is the age that Peterson would have been teaching in his undergraduate psychology lectures here at the University of Toronto, where he's telling them that Hitler basically he was unbelievably great at burning Jews, that he burned them beautifully. This is a crime. This ought to be considered a crime. Canadians ought to be outraged by this. But if Canadians have any reaction, any strong reaction at all, I will be surprised. I'm going to lose this battle. There's no winning it. People don't care. But anyway, I carry on. I spoke to two other people I want to mention were young men. One was white, one was not, and the one who was white got really in my face, like a 22-year-old guy or something like that, and said that I was being really disrespectful to the Jews, and by calling Jordan Peterson a Nazi. To say such a thing, one would have to be eminently confused. So we had some words, and I told him that he should look at evidence, but of course he wouldn't take a card, and he probably wouldn't know how to look at evidence anyway. I wonder if they even teach them that here. But another guy was not white, and he started yelling at me and saying, "You can't say that about Peterson. You can't say it, like it's out of bounds to say that someone is a Nazi. It's just not permissible." And this again is a widespread view that you can't say that people are Nazis, because apparently this was done a lot on the internet or something like that. It's just not allowed. So there's no understanding, there's no thinking about is this person really a Nazi? Is there evidence to support this claim? So evidence avoidance and evidence denial are two major themes. Now, one could forgive young students at the University of Toronto for not knowing how to do research, for not knowing how to examine evidence, I suppose, because again, I don't know if they learn critical thinking skills here or learn something like critical pedagogy or critical literacy here. I'm going to guess that they don't, but I don't really know. They might, but even still, if you were an undergraduate student, you mightn't learn that, so you mightn't really know. But what's the excuse for the adults? And what's the excuse for the Canadian media, who have expensive degrees in journalism and have nice salaries? What is their excuse for not being willing to examine evidence? There's no excuse for that. It's just pathetic, really. So anyway, I'm going to carry on now, and it's getting a bit cold here in the alley. Check out this old building. Kind of funky, yeah? Okay, all right. We'll check in with you later.